Welcome to the Deliberate Leaders podcast with Emerging Talent. I'm your host, Anna. On this podcast, we connect with professionals in their 20s and 30s to gain insight into their journeys, aspirations, and motivations. I'm excited to introduce to you Melina Hadstock with Rimon Law. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, Anna. Happy to be here.
So good to hear that. Okay, so first question, help me understand your career journey.
All right, my career journey. So I started out in math and economics. That's what I studied in college. And I was from a little town in New Hampshire. And so my first job out of college, professional job out of college, was at a logistics organization that supplies grocery. I started there and I worked through a lot of different departments within the organization in like a leadership development program. So I got to know sales and transportation, and then kind of really found my passion in project management. I worked my way through my MBA and then, decided I wanted a change of pace, at least in terms of an industry. So I switched over to legal. So still doing projects, still doing what makes me happy, but different industry and something new to learn. Oh, I think you're on mute.
I didn't realize we both had the grocery in common.
Oh, really? You have some
Yeah,
grocery in your background too. I didn't know
I
that.
yeah, I did Fifth Key Center store at so
Oh,
in the store, not necessarily like you were probably in the corporate office.
yeah. Well, anyone who says center store when they're talking about grocery, is real. They're real ones.
Yes. Oh, I'm glad that we've both left grocery behind though.
Yeah.
Um, that's cool that you found a different industry but the same type of like project management. That's
Yeah.
cool. So how would you define success in your career?
I think for me it's a balance of feeling like I'm doing what kind of brings me joy and brings me happiness, and also feeling like I am able to support myself, and be financially sort of independent. I grew up with a single mom, and we didn't really make all that much money growing up. And so that was something that, she really pushed me on growing up, was to be financially independent. So having some of that flexibility, but also finding a way that I can be passionate about what I do at the end of the day too. So I think for me, it's always been about balance.
Yeah, that's our childhoods impact us so much. I'm glad that you allowed that to motivate you and didn't get angry at your mom for encouraging you to like be self-sufficient in a way. Like you were like, yes, mom, I agree. Like, and you probably to some degree take care of her a little bit now to say thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's like the best circle of life, They take care of you for so long and then you kind of get to an age where you're like, man, I can help you sometimes, which is really special, way of paying it back, paying it forward.
Through all of that, your career in the grocery, then doing the MBA, now working in law, have you been able to have a mentor throughout that process?
Yeah, that's a good question. I love mentorship type relationships. I've always tried to have one in my career, and I've had a couple. And only recently have I actually reached out to someone about getting a mentor, or asking her if she'd be willing to be my mentor. So it was in the last like week or so, and I think that for me, just I really felt like I was in a place where I wanted to have some different perspective, and so I finally reached out.
Nice. I guess you maybe haven't started yet, so maybe not speaking on that one, but the ones that have impacted you most, what about that relationship like made you feel comfortable to ask them to be your mentor?
Yeah, for sure. I think that, you know, for me, it's always been helpful to look and reflect on why do I want a mentor in the first place, and what am I hoping to gain from this relationship? And that can change, throughout my life and changes through other people's lives. And I think in a lot of ways. So, there has been times where I've wanted to, look at someone else's career and say, like, I really want to go on a similar trajectory as you. So how can I get there, and what can I learn from you? And then there's other times, which is, kind of what I'm hoping to get out of the current mentor that I've reached out to, is what can I gain from having really different perspective, from this relationship, and really kind of challenging the way I think about things so that I can grow. So I think for me, it's been about understanding fundamentally like what it is that I'm seeking, and then yeah, trying to be just authentic and open with the person so that you can get what you want out of it, and be honest, about your needs and their needs as well.
Um, you said this is the first one that you've reached out to, so like before it's just been unofficial, let me talk to you.
Yeah, a lot of the time. So in my last company, we were kind of assigned mentors. Like it was a mentorship program that they wanted you to have somebody, and then another one I had in college was somebody that I just really, she kind of just took me under her wing without even saying it, and we kind of talked through a lot of things. But this one was the first that I said, I think I'm missing something, and I think I need something in this relationship, and I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to ask for it.
Oh, good on you. I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
So it sounds like you are very professionally oriented, like career oriented. Um, how do you prioritize what goal you're going to go after next?
That's a good question. I think it's important to balance, enjoying a little bit of, your day to day, and being reflective and in the moment with the people that you're with in your job and in your projects, and then kind of thinking sort of long term into where you kind of want to go, and sort of balancing those two all the time. Um, I think for me, I usually do some sort of like yearly reflection or bi-yearly. I know for a lot of people in business that might be an annual review process, it might be New Year's resolutions, so I usually do that. But I also look at things more on a monthly basis, because I think that there's so much that we're learning and developing, and business needs change all the time as well too. So how can we kind of grow with that in a more agile way?
Oh, I love that. I You're speaking to my heart, dude. Love it.
I love it.
Um, have you experienced any particular moments of doubt or uncertainty in your career?
For sure. I think for me, I'm somebody that really want, I mean, maybe a lot of us in this sort of millennial generation are like this in some way, but I've really placed a lot of self-worth on being successful and being really good at something. And so I think that there's sometimes have been moments in my career where I'm not really good at something for the first time. I get assigned a new project, you know different different things in business that I'm struggling to kind of work my way through, and I'm not a rock star right off the bat. And so in those moments, you get the imposter syndrome, and you start to think like, am I cut out for this? And am I good enough? And those things have kind of made me question, in my career, like, am I on the right path? Am I doing the right thing? For sure.
Do you feel like you fit the mold for a young professional, or do you feel like maybe you get along more with the adults and then you also don't, or like do you fit the mold of a young professional?
It's a good question. I mean, depends on how you rank it. I mean, young professional means so many different things, depending on the community that you live in. Because I know in some, young professional networking groups, it can be people that, even are at the high end of millennials, or even, the generation above me, and in some of the Gen Z. So I think it's really expansive. In a lot of ways, I think I do feel like a young professional. And only in the last like year or two have I started to feel like I'm developing more out of that. But yeah, still a young professional, I think.
Yeah.
It'll take a long time for me to grow out of that title, I'm sure.
Yes. Yes. Um, yeah. So when you're having imposter syndrome or struggling through those moments of uncertainty, what are the lessons that you've learned to pull yourself out, or just a lesson from
Yeah.
not being a rock star at a young
Yes.
age?
Totally. I think for me, it's I've worked to find appreciation and maybe gratitude in the things that make me that make me successful, So maybe it's like my grit or my determination or the fact that I will show up to a challenge and keep working at something even though it's really hard. And not everyone can do that, or not everyone does do that. And so I think just remembering, like, there are pieces of your personality that make you successful beyond just being, naturally or innately good at a certain task. And I think that remembering that and having people see that um, is often more important at the end of the day.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of a resilience ceiling?
Yes.
You have?
Yes.
Okay.
Probably.
Tell me
Yeah.
what you think or what it means to you.
So to me, I think, well, I'd be really curious to hear from somebody who actually works in sort of like a coaching professional, your perception on it. But I think when I think of it, it's sort of thinking about, the balance between, I think, our talent and our ability to kind of have this resilient, and sort of which one would almost like tap out first. You know what I mean? Like you can kind of push yourself really, really far, and that can kind of bring you sometimes farther than, yeah, your innate talent, I think.
Yeah. I heard it this morning, so I don't know that I'm an expert either, but she said oftentimes when we're describing the gal who did it, her name is Tasha Birkin. I'm saying it wrong, but she wrote Bankable Leadership. And we define it as our ability to cope when things get tough. And the actual definition is our capability to cope when things get tough. So eventually we're going
Yeah.
to reach this ceiling where, like, we're not able to be resilient anymore. Like, we've reached our battery limit.
Yes.
That's okay. that's
Which
that's
is which is so important too, is like, where do you kind of like draw that line, of like, I can be resilient through this, and then also ask for help and all of those other things. I love that.
Yeah. Um, are there any career related goals or aspiration that you've been hesitant to pursue?
In my career, yes, for sure. I think at the current moment, thankfully, I'm not facing too many. I think the most recent one has been, I want to do some sort of like continuing education, like more certification type work. But I'm not sure if it's the right time. So I think that that's been something that I've kind of been considering. But in my career, there's been definitely a lot of times where I've sort of questioned um, if I should move forward on something or not.
Yeah. Uh, I don't know that that feeling ever goes away. And I like to say that it's just a young professional thing, but I think we're always going to be faced with what's the next decision and do I move forward on that or not. So if any consolation, like, I don't think it gets better.
That's good. There's
Well,
sometimes like some comfort in numbers, right? Knowing that you're not like alone.
yes. Okay, so moving more like into your experience as an employee, how have you navigated workplace politics or difficult colleagues?
That's a good question. I think for me, I work in project management, and so that's a, interesting field in that you work with so many different types of people, from HR and IT and, finance, and a lot of people, I think, come to the table with different experience and different goals and needs at the end of the day. And so a lot of the time, I'm sort of trying to navigate the fact that people have different things that they're bringing to the table, and even, in certain, I think, departments, different things that drive them and motivate them and bring them joy in their day-to-day lives. And sometimes that can come out, to me as, conflict or negativity or frustration towards a project, or all those things that we, recognize in the day-to-day. And um, I think the way kind of around that is, I always try to lead with fact and empathy, with business decisions. I mean,
Fact and empathy, is that what you said?
fact and empathy, yes, both, exactly. Those are my two. It's like, we are working on solving a problem together. This is what we're all trying to do and trying to overcome and face. And these are the I mean, maybe this is me being a math nerd, but like this is the theorem that makes up what we know, right? And we're going to have to make a proof out of this. And then the other side of like, we're human, and our jobs does impact, our emotions in a lot of ways and how we kind of view ourselves and view the world, and trying to pair that between the two, and yeah, I think try to make sense of the both. There's a business component, we need to get things done, and then there's a human component. Like, it's only going to get done if you have your best people, in it with the right mindset, and feeling good about what you're trying to do.
Yeah, nice. Nicely said.
Thank you.
What do you value the most in workplace culture?
For workplace culture, I think being in any sort of business or with leadership that is willing to understand that you're going to make mistakes and grow with you as you do that. None of us are ever going to come to a workplace perfect. We're going to make ideas and we're going to take risks, and it's not always going to pan out. So I think, having some understanding of that is super important. And then really good colleagues, that you feel like care about you at the end of the day as well, and they care about your growth, they care about your family, and you feel like really supported in what you're doing. So I guess I'm just describing in many ways to feel supported in what you're doing.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned risk in there.
Mhm.
I think maybe that's something I value is the ability to take a risk and know that you're going to be supported, whether it pans out or not. Of just like, I think the most growth happens when we're able to step outside of what we know is going to be true, but we have this gut feeling that that's something that we need to be taking action on. So then we take the risk and it turns out or it doesn't. But having the support behind the team is incredible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so moving into a rapid fire, we'll just ask you a question. You'll answer the first thing that comes to your mind, not a lot of discussion on it.
All right,
Okay.
let's do it.
What's your go-to source of inspiration when you need to refocus and motivate yourself as a leader?
Honestly, time away, getting in nature and doing something to kind of reset.
Nice. What's one self-development practice that you swear by, and how has it helped you in your leadership journey?
um, Keep learning, be curious, be open to learning, and I think it'll get you super far.
If you could develop any leadership trait overnight, what would it be?
Um, I I don't know if this is a leadership trait, but I mean, I would love to not feel so questioning on my decisions all the time. You know what I mean? So maybe that's confidence. Just continuing to work on my confidence, and develop that.
What is your best tip or trick or tool to leverage your personal or professional life?
um, Tip, trick, or tool. I would say track your goals. They're important to write them down. And when you start to write them down, they're going to start to actually, you know, start to make sense and memorialize themselves.
What is one book or resource that has had a profound impact on your leadership style?
Ooh, book or resource. I will be honest in saying that I don't read a ton of business professional books. I read a lot of articles. So I would say, like maybe like a Harvard Business Review article or something like that. But yeah, nothing super profoundly, changing in my leadership style. But I would say when you have a problem that you're faced with, work through learning, so just always kind of find a book or an article or a tool that you can use to kind of relate to your current situation.
The Google searches as I'm struggling through something are incredible. Help me with
Right.
imposter syndrome.
Yes, exactly. This is what I'm feeling this week. This is what I want to listen to an article or, listen to a podcast on. And yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be on this podcast and share about your career journey and how you've gotten here and where you are going. If someone has absolutely resonated with what you've said and are hoping that you can act as a sounding board or a short-term mentor, what is the best way that they can reach out to you?
You can email me. If you look up my name, Melina Hadstock at Rimon Law, or it's just melina.hadstock at rimonlaw.com, then happy to talk.
Okay, perfect. Again, thank you for your time, and I'm sure we'll chat soon.
Yes, thank you, Anna.